Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanmo TV and welcome to this, another recording of the events and the speeches at Dreaming Saucers. Now this particular recording is one done by Ronald Kinsella, who's the twin brother of Philip Kinsella. Now Ronnie talks about something which, it concerns something you may have heard of before. You may have heard the name Archons, the word Archon, before, but a lot of people actually are familiar with the term without necessarily knowing what it means or what Archons actually are. I think I've mentioned a couple of times several researchers such as John Lash, who's talked about the Archons, and many others. Graham Hancock has touched on this as well. And it's possible that the Archons are familiar to people. They sometimes come across with several different names. I mean, whether it's accurate to actually consider them the same phenomenon, but there's a lot of familiarity to me when I look into people who discuss demons and the jinn, especially the unpleasant variety of jinns. It appears that Archons are primarily unpleasant, although Ronnie, getting those two mixed up again, Ronnie has his own ideas about this, and again this is a fascinating talk which I hope you'll enjoy. Yeah, I certainly learned a few things from Ronnie, and indeed from Philip as well, and the other speakers. So there's more coming up soon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have another talk from Ronald Kinsella, who is the twin brother of Philip, who you just saw. We're going to talk about a different subject though. Yeah. It's Archons. What are they and what do they want? The answers and more questions will no doubt be provided in the next hour. So, Ronald Kinsella, everybody.
I'll try my best. It's only theories, because I don't believe anyone has any answers. The one thing that amazes me about this subject is when you hear people saying, you know, the expert. There are no experts, as we all know. No expert. They're very good at researching. They're very good at looking into it, but no one on this planet is an expert. I do believe that there are some factions that are a little bit wiser to it than we are. I'm talking about the military. But I'll introduce myself. So I'm Ronald Kinsella, as they call me now. As you know, I'm a twin to Philip. I haven't had an experience with the Greys. I've never seen a Grey, but I did have an experience when I was 13 years old, and I'll come to that in a minute. And this scarred me for life, what I saw. I've never, ever forgotten it. In fact, I think of it every day of the week that occurred, and I still can't work it out. It wasn't a dream, it was physical. So, right. As Philip said, I'm an artist. I love science fiction, and that's the curse that comes with this. You're imaginative. I think you know where that leads to. But I've always been honest and truthful. I never elaborate. If something happens in black and white, I will just record it as it is. I will never colour it. That is the worst thing anyone can do. Or use it for monetary gain. I mean, we all need money, and we all love to promote things, but I have a passion with what I do. And with the art, I didn't realise role it would play would be to help illustrate the events that occurred in the past with me. Now, Philip and I have written children's books. We always were imaginative when we were children. When I was a kid, I was frightened of the world, frightened of the teachers, because even then the cane was in effect. I saw once a pupil having his mouth washed out with soap by a formidable northern teacher who we had for every lesson when I was about 9 years old, and they could do that because he swore in class. But I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I had an interest in art, especially with robots. I don't know why I had this fascination for inanimate objects, bringing them to life. I just had this absolute urge to create robots or build them. So the artwork is all done by myself. And these complement books that were published later on in life, much later, I didn't realise how difficult it was to get published, taking many years of heartache to try and get published. But this is science fiction. They're children's and adult books, And they're humorous. I love humour, as the chap was saying. I absolutely love humour. I think you've got to have a laugh. Ben, you were saying, right? You've got to have a good old scream and laugh. And basically these books are about identical twin brothers who are 60 years old. They're bone idle. They don't want to do anything. They need money, but they're very clever with electronics. So they build, the first one, they build this robot. And it's an old tune, I know, but it backfires because Ramshack, the robot they build, becomes assertive and turns the tables on them. And the second book here is when they build a mechanical elephant. They go one step further to reclaim a diamond in Africa, where the tribe worship a shimmering elephant god and it will return from the stars. And so they build one to fob him off as the thing to try and get this diamond from them. I won't tell you what happens, that would spoil the book. And there's a third one coming out. These are the new covers, before I go on to the Archons. These are the new covers for the books that have been remastered. The publishers withdrew the books that was first done in 2006, 2008. There was a third one, The Rise of Ramshack, which is coming out shortly. So we've re-released them on Amazon. The wonderful thing about Amazon is that they do a good job with them. So that's the... A little bit about myself. I'm an artist. I love drawing and artwork. This chap here, there's Ramshack again. A conceptual design I had of him to revamp him. I don't know why, as I said, I have this fascination with robots, but they are going to be part of our future, and I think they're going to be very important. They're going to be amazing. I have a hunch when they build them, they'll be that small, little men to run around in your house, and the good thing about them is they will be used as security bots. They look after your home when you go to work. They'll check up on the house, you know. But as with everything, like the internet, they will be used and abused. This is a picture of a robot dog. They're not new. I mean, we had K9, but I developed Magnus the Micronaut Philip, and I developed him for children. He's still in his infancy. There's been a book done on him, but we're not too happy with it, so we're going to revise him for the future and try to come up with a conceivable idea for him. He's cute and he's lovable. His mistress is a princess. She's a tomboy princess. And they go on adventures, but they're concepts. He was published, I think, a few years ago. So that is my interest in robots. Now, the thing about the Archons, my interest in this subject came to me when I was a boy, because I had no interest in religion. I didn't care about the governments or anything like that. I didn't believe in God. I thought mediums were all hoaxes. It's terrible. It's a naive child. Until I passed this church, my grandma, she was absolutely lovely. She pointed at this mosaic image of this face in it, and she said, "That's God." And I looked at it and I said to her, that's not God. It can't be God. God's never incarnated. And she looked puzzled. She looked quite absolutely gobsmacked. I was surprised at what I'd said, because I had no interest in religion, but I knew that was not God. I believe in a God. I believe in a force, a love, as Philip has rightly said, love. So, to add to this, I didn't realise my grandma was psychic. She never told us she was psychic. And the beginning of these UFOs and these Archons started when I was 13, because an incident occurred with Philip, myself, and my grandma, who was psychic, as I said, that completely winded me. And it has to this day. We used to stay with them. They lived in Tashbrook Road in Middlesex, a beautiful, quite largish house, 3-storey high. And we stayed there every summer with them, with my granddad and my grandma. And they were absolutely wonderful. And one summer, we were outside with grandma, and I think she was hanging some clothes out on the line. And I kid you not, this orb came right over the fence from the back. It moved up really quick, and it approached us rather fast. It approached grandma, and then it just stopped above her head. Now, being rational minded, you would firstly think it's a balloon. It's the first thing that came to my mind. It's a balloon. It wasn't a balloon. It was solid. It didn't have any cord, there were no seams, and it was quite breezy that day. It didn't move, it was static. It must have been perhaps a bit lower than that alarm there, just a little bit lower. It was quite big, and it hung over her head. Well, Philip and I were absolutely gobsmacked. It was static. It looked as if it was made of titanium. It looked heavy, really heavy. And it just hovered over Grandma's head. Now, we just pointed at it, and Grandma said something very bizarre. She just turned and said, "Oh, look, the fairies have come to take a closer look." But Philip and I knew that wasn't fairies. That looked like it was technology, and it was technology. The second thought that came to me was I had the distinct impression it was an electronic eye. It was watching us. This was in 1982, or I think it was 1982. So the military definitely wouldn't have any technology. They wouldn't have mastered anti-gravity mechanisms, anything that could defy gravity. No, they couldn't. I don't believe they could. And even if they could, why on earth would they send the thing to observe a grandmother with her 2 grandchildren? They wouldn't do it. Well, this thing, after about 4 or 5 minutes, it started to move. And it went towards the house. And then it stopped before the windows. I didn't realise it was having a good look in. Then it started moving up, straight up. It was passing the windows as it went up, this all. And then we raced in to the front of the house, trying to look for it, and we saw it moving overhead, down this old dirt track, and it disappeared. That was it. It gone. It was astonishing as it was unearthly. And, you know, even when we tell people today about it, oh, it's a balloon. You saw a balloon. That was not a balloon. As a kid of 13 who's very naive, who didn't trust mediums or anything, you know what you see. That was technology, and it was unearthly. It was quite frightening, actually. It's funny, when you're a kid, you want to hold it. You want to grab it. I distinctly remember thinking, I want to grab it. I want to hold it. It was heavy. It looked heavy. But I don't think it would have allowed that. So, after that incident, the worst was yet to come. Now, during this time, something else very odd happened. I didn't mention this on the talk I did at Neil's group. We used to be given money by Grandma and Grandad. They were very generous, absolutely lovely grandparents. You couldn't have asked for any better grandparents. They used to give us money, so we used to go to Hounslow. And they had a bargain bookshop there. We'd go always around every week to have a look at the books, and it was like, you know, you're a kid, or a young teenager, it's all these glossy books with all these lovely pictures. Well, there was one on there that caught our attention with poltergeists. Now, I didn't believe in poltergeists then, but I believe Steven Spielberg had released his wonderful film, Poltergeist, at the time. So this book was based on true accounts of people who had these experiences, which I do believe now, they're real, poltergeists. So we bought it, and we went home, and Grandad was there. My Grandad was very regimental, loved him, but he was regimental. And we were very proud. We pulled it out of the brown bag and said, "Grandad, look what we bought. We've got a book, Poltergeist." Well, he went ballistic. He went absolutely ballistic. This was an admission. This was more shocking than I could have ever imagined. It was an admission because he never voiced his opinions in UFOs, nothing about demons or anything like that. I'll use the word, "What the bloody hell did you buy that for?" He said, "You need to burn it, get rid of it." And I'll never forget the words, his immortal words, "You don't bloody well mess with the likes of them." And that was it. He was so angry. I was frightened. My grandfather, it was regimental, shouting, he raised his voice. It was like, oh my God. So we didn't look at the book. What did he know? He was a man of the world. He knew something. He knew something very dark. I found out when he died that he was part of a group. I won't elaborate any more than that. But that confirmed it. So he knew something. You don't mess with them. Anyway, getting back to this sphere, I think it must have been perhaps 6 months later or 8 months, I had the experience. Now, as I said, it wasn't like Philip's. I was 13 years old, and it was horrendous. What it was, we lived in Luton at the time, at Hazelbury Crescent, up by the football grounds. The Victorian house are quite big, spacious houses. It doesn't make you rich or aloof, but it's just what we had. And one night, this was not a dream. I was taken from my bed, whipped through the loft. I know it sounds bizarre, it sounds ridiculous even saying it now. It's taken me a long time to actually come out with this. This is my second speech, as I said, by the way. Whipped up into the sky, it was night, and there was something dark hanging in the sky, very dark. I couldn't discern what it was, but it was hanging there. The next thing I remembered was I was in this wheelchair, And this wheelchair wasn't like our traditional ones, it was very modern. I think it was white, I can't remember exactly. But I was seated in it and I was paralysed. The horror of it was that ahead of me, I realised I was in some kind of operating theatre. It wasn't messy, well, I wouldn't say it was advanced, but it was just clinical. And I saw these doctors, I call them the doctors, standing before the operating theatre. Now there was one behind me, a male. I knew he was male, I couldn't see him, but I knew instinctively he was male, because I'd woken up. And he was the leader, I called him the leader. He was the one in charge. And I don't know whether I disturbed them or why I had woken up. I mean, this is the point I'm going to make afterwards about this. But evidently I had just woken up. And they obviously were startled, but they were so heavily disguised, these beings. They were a bit taller than me. They were masked from head to toe. You couldn't even see their eyes. They were like radiation outfits. So I knew, straight away, I knew they were not human. I don't know why, but I knew they weren't human. But they weren't mammoth. And he spoke. And when he spoke, it jolted me. He said, we're going to perform an operation on you, Ronald. And when he said my name, I flinched. I remember I flinched because he knew me, but I didn't know him. But there was an authority and kindness to his voice, enough for me to trust him. But it was the operating table that I knew going to do something. I was horrified by that. I remembered pleading. I said, no, please, I don't want the operation. For some disquieting reason, I knew it was to do with the head. They needed to do something to the head. I don't know why, but it was to do with the head. And he said, no, he said, we've got to do this operation. He said, I'm going to promise you one thing, we will not harm you, but this has to be done. Then, I was out. The next thing I remembered, this is the worst of it, I was dropping from the thing, this dark thing. I could never discern what it was. Gather it was a ship of some kind. I don't know. Evidently it was. But I was dropping, and the one thing that I will say is that my body felt electric. I had this pulse as I was dropping, and my hair felt like it was on end, static. And as I was dropping through the roof of the house, the loft, I was coming down, and I could feel this pum, pum, pum. My skin was crawling. It felt electric. I was electrified. And I felt this gentle bump. And that's horrible, because you know it's real, it's happening. That's the worst of it. I think my mind was fighting, but it was happening. I felt the bump, and then I went cold. I felt prone and vulnerable. And then when I looked up, they did something really nasty, or I felt at the time it was nasty. They projected, and it was projected. I knew even at 13 years old it was some type of hologram, or something they'd used. This gigantic Cheshire Cat, the head of it. Now, it made Lewis's Carol cat look like a pussy cat. This thing was massive, and it was grinning, and it looked evil. It's a face I have never forgotten. I couldn't even redraw it. I couldn't recapture this thing, what they had done. Now, after that, after it dissipated, it went. But it was there long enough to scar me for life, because I've never forgotten that blasted thing. It was horrifying. Now, I couldn't, in 1982 or 3, I'm sorry, I have recorded the day, I can't remember, it was 13. In that time, you couldn't talk about these things, you couldn't talk about poltergeists with your granddad. Get rid of it, don't talk about it. The UFOs, you couldn't say anything to anyone. No father, teachers, you couldn't say a thing. So, to add insult to injury, I was imaginative. I had a grandma who was psychic. You can see where this is going. I didn't, thankfully, go to pieces. I didn't. I'm strong. One thing I was curious about is, firstly, why, if they were going to take me, why didn't they just keep me asleep? They obviously can do it. Was I strong enough to disturb them? Did I unwittingly disturb them? I must have done. It goes to show they're fallible. They are fallible. Because they could have just taken me, done it without any knowledge. But I disturbed them somehow, I don't know why, so they seem to be a little bit weaker than we think, strong in some aspects, but weak in others. Secondly, why did they show me the Cheshire Cat? I have a theory on that. And if it's right, I think they're very, very smart. The reason why they showed me that, I think a few years prior to that, I had seen Alice in Wonderland. And I think what they did was to ensure that it will be covered, they plucked that out so they understand us very well, and they projected it from my mind 1,000 times worse. So when I go to a psychologist and I tell her about the cat, they say, oh, yeah, you've been down the rabbit hole. You've seen Alice in Wonderland. You're just getting confused. Very, very smart. Now, I have thought about what happened with these doctors, and I think they've done good to me. Because I don't know whether it is connected with the incident, because I'm physically fit, always have been, touch wood, I've been physically fit, nothing wrong with me. And I've never had any fits, but after that I had a massive fit. It was at school, dreaded school, bullied at school, Philip and I, being twins, you're an oddity even there. I was sitting in geography, I think it was, and I had this massive pains down my head. This is after they'd done this. Massive pains through my head, striking. I've never had them. It was awful. It was physical. It felt physical. Strike, and I collapsed. And I started fitting on the floor. I'd never fitted in my life. I've never since. Could it be possible? I was all right afterwards, apart from a banging headache. Could it be possible that they foresaw something was going to happen and they corrected it? If they did, I'm very grateful to them. Very grateful. Because they've... I can't prove that that's what caused it, but it seems damn odd that I had that afterwards. Could it be possible they foresaw? And why me? I'm not special. I'm like anyone else. You know? So, and I've never seen them again. But what I have seen is the UFOs. And this happens every 2 or 3 years. Now, the nasty thing about this is you don't ask for this to happen. I didn't ask for any of it. You know, oh yeah, you know, what you're going to say, you keep seeing them all the time. You say to people, I've seen UFOs, you know what they're going to do, their reaction. Most of them are negative or tunnel visioned. I've had it all. As I said to the chap, they wear the crocodile grin, these people. They smile. They appear sympathetic, but inside you can read them like glass. Just as transparent as anything. You can see what they're doing. They're laughing at you. And it has been used at work years ago through a promotional basis where 2 members of staff, I can't say their names, but due to Philip, said to the manager then, years ago, how can you promote someone who sees flying saucers? Charming. This incident with the doctors led on to something even more peculiar. My grandmother died. She died, our grandmother died of cancer, but she made me promise 3 things before she died. She phoned me up and said, I'm dying. I want you to look after your mum. I said, yes, we can do that. I want you to carry on with your writing. I said, yes, I can do that. She said, don't cry at the funeral. I said, Grandma, I can't promise that. At the funeral, when they rolled in a coffin, she's tiny, little child's coffin, they rolled it in, I started laughing. It's a good job I had a handkerchief. I mean, I was mortified. I remember I was horrified. Why the hell am I laughing? I couldn't stop it. And when they were reading out all her tributes, I saw the lid open up. I saw her coming out. She said, bugger this, Jim, put the kettle on. I didn't make any connection till afterwards that what she'd done, she'd fulfilled her wish. I didn't cry, I didn't shed one tear. And I think she imposed that on me. Somehow, I know something is absolutely true. She did that so that I wouldn't shed a tear. She didn't want me unhappy. She never wanted to see us unhappy. Now, this gets much more bizarre because when she died, Philip went to see a medium. Now, I'm very naive, even after them, the doctors, who I have to give credit to, I think, for what they did. Thinking about it now, I have a lot to thank them for, whoever they were, whatever they were. But Philip went to see a medium, and I always envisioned this gypsy woman with you know, the cards and the crystal ball, and of course my palm was silver. And I joked, I said, even then, I was absolutely atrocious the way I thought of people, because I'm suspicious of people. You know, we are. You know, more or less in this world now, they just take. They give little back. So he went to see this medium, and he came back, and the first thing I noticed quite distinctly, he stank of youth dew. Now, my grandma was always swamped in it. Youth dew. She absolutely adored that. She always wore it. And he smelt it, and I said to him, was the medium wearing any perfume? No. I said, but I can smell grammar on you. It was physical. It was physical. It's on him. So I made an appointment to see this medium. And she agreed. And after a delay, I went to see her and I was stone-faced. I wouldn't give any reaction away to her, because I believed she could read your mind. I was so absolutely terrible. I needn't have bothered. She didn't even look at me. She looked at the wall. She brought my whole life through. I was an open book. And it's not just these trivial things they show on TV, like they say, is anybody there to degrade the subject. These were accurate, pinpointed details, even to the point of a lady in the world, a very prominent lady, I can't give her name, sent us a number of letters. She said, they're showing me something over your head, and 8. You've received that so many. You're going to see a lot more of them. She was right. That was how many received from her, with the symbol over the head. She was right. And she told me that you and your brother have been in contact with these things for a long time. She didn't elaborate. She said these things, and I've never seen him, but she said you've been in contact with these things, and I thought of the doctors. So that nothing more was said, and she phoned us up. She wanted to come round. She said, I'd like to do past life regression with you. Well, I trusted her enough then now to believe her. So we agreed on it, and she was very professional. Pearl, her name was Pearl. She was very professional. She came round with to fill out this questionnaire, and we did this questionnaire, your fears, your preferences, your tastes, all that. And it's hard to put me under, because I think she used a form of hypnosis, but it wasn't. It was very sensibly done, and I'm very dubious about hypnosis. But she put me under, she got me under, and it took about half an hour, and when I was under, I saw these clouds forming. And I gather the clouds were present to show each incarnation. So the first thing I saw was I was in Egypt. Now I didn't see the pyramids of Giza. I don't know what era it was, but it was to do with the building. I was a scrawny man, really. I mean, so old. I couldn't believe they could live that long. Then I was filthy looking, a counsellor, and there were others behind me, all their versions of counsellors. I gather. I knew, and we were to see this piece of block being put in place. It was obviously very important. Pharaoh needed an update, so he sent his minions to go and check. He couldn't be present. He was busy, by the way, I gathered. To show royalty have pressing duties that have. He wanted to know about this piece going in. I don't know why it was important. It was just important. But something went wrong. I was standing. I saw this all graphically. It's like a film, running and running. And the funny thing is, there was no audio, but you could hear it anyway. It's really weird. This thing fell. It killed me instantly. We're in the path. It all went wrong. Something collapsed. I was killed. The clouds returned. And I saw myself, now this is very interesting, as a scrawny boy, a Christian, thrown into the Colosseum. It was Rome. Some kind of Colosseum, I don't know which one, it was probably the main one. And I could hear all this jeering. As I said, there's no audio, but you hear it. All this jeering and all this, so I remembered seeing all this dust, and I saw all these horses charging, and these chariots, and the Roman soldiers, or gladiators as they call them now, were slaughtering us for sport. And I remembered on this particular scene, I was so frightened I grabbed hold of the back of this chariot because I was frightened to death of being stabbed, to try and get hold of the guard, to try and get away from this. It was futile. I felt this sword go right through my back. I felt it, right as I was dead. And the funny thing is that prior to that, when I went to bed, I used to stick a book up there. I kept thinking someone was stabbing me. Even now, I sleep like that, because I'm frightened of something going through me. I had no idea. It's as if there are echoes. These are echoes that follow you. I had no idea it was to do with the sword, but I used to stick a book up there, thinking someone was stabbing me. Well, the clouds appeared again, and this time I was a Roman soldier, a captain, a young man, and I had a small battalion of people with me, and we were at war with these ruffians. Now, as Ben, you said yourself, the Romans were cruel and vile, but they were following orders from their emperor, so they had to do what they were told. And I had got into this fight, and they pinned me down and killed me in the most embarrassing way. They got this object and smashed it right there. I saw it, it's all graphic. I died instantly, and it was with force. the anger. I know it sounds embarrassing, but I'm going to say it because that's what intrigued me. This rolling thing showing me. Always mare. The clouds appeared again, and I saw the last one, which involved something like these. This is my artwork again of the Archons, as they call them, demons and reptilians. The last one I saw, I never saw Atlantis, because she said, Philip and I, Pearl had said, when I had the reading with her originally, I forgot to mention that we had been even on Atlantis, we reincarnated many times. We were sisters on Atlantis. I thought of Hinge and Bracket. We had been, not when it went down, it was something called the Golden Era. So when you were mentioning about Atlantis and Rome, I had to smile because I thought there's some connections, apparent connections. Anyway, getting back to the alleged apparent reincarnations, I was in a jungle on a temple, and there's this woman with me. She had black hair. I knew it was Philip. I just knew that was my brother. I was a male, and I was looking up. I think it was Cheshire Cat or somewhere like that. Something, I can't be accurate. And I suddenly caught the corner of my eye. I saw this thing coming down, and I noticed it was a ship. It didn't surprise me at all in this state. It was like a huge metal spider. It was coming down. It's a spaceship coming down. It's landing, obviously landing. Then I was compelled to look at my wrist, and I saw this disc. I drew this. This was 22 years ago. I had this. I've recorded it, all from the book I showed you. This disc, and I knew that was a television screen to see the Masters. You could speak and see them on here. This disc, this golden disc on this hand here. And I knew they'd returned to grace their presence upon us primitives, again, the Masters, the ones who have taught us so much. And I had a fleeting glance at their faces, something like that. They didn't have wings. I've elaborated that for the demons, but it was something like that. I saw a portion of their faces. And it amazes me. I had no interest in Chichen at the time. I found out later on they had the feather serpent. They worshipped lizards as well. So it's just strange how that's come into effect. So that was the past life regression. So I knew that there was more to all this than meets the eye, you know. And then I still tried to deny it. I'd recorded everything for the book, which I wrote, that was 22 years ago I had all this. I documented it, drew it, but later on, 22 years later, I wrote the book. I had my uncle's father stay with us, and these UFOs occurred again, because he was an atheist. And I admired the old boy because he was a survivor of the Japanese war camps, so I had great respect for him. And we were sitting out the garden one night. This was about 9 years ago, do you think? 9 or 10 years ago. Sitting out there, and then all of a sudden, these two massive balls of light came overhead. They were massive. They weren't pinpricks of light the size of the moon. Two of them. As I looked to where they were coming from, another two appeared. And then another two. And then one. Tailing behind. So you've got two, 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 or one centerfold. They went overhead. The one interesting thing about them is I heard dogs barking everywhere. We could hear dogs barking. Well, he stood up, and there was a feeling that accompanied them as well. A terrible, terrible feeling. Dread, and I will say dread. People would put it down to fright. And now you will have the skeptics who will say again that all is all your imagination. The orb was a balloon. These are ball lightning or hallucinations. They will say everything other than what they were. Because when you're in their presence, it's damn different. It really is. When you're in their presence, there is something called, I think Jenny Randall's coined the phrase, the Oz factor. It's not real, but it's real. But you see it, I had a witness. And as they passed overhead, these massive things, we went inside. Another poor old boy who was shot, I was shot. And he said, can you tell me what I had just seen? I said, no, I want you to tell me what you've just seen. He said, well, I can tell you one thing. There's nothing, I've seen some things in my time, but there's nothing we have here on Earth. So that was regarding the 7 UFOs. And incidentally, I have a police officer friend, a few days later, she happened to be patrolling Bedfordshire with a colleague, and she noticed the 7 objects hanging in the sky like that, 2, 2, 2, 1. She said the reason why they attracted her attention was they looked so damn big and odd. They were static. I said the ones we saw were moving. She said they were static. So that was the UFOs at Kempston. And we see them every 2 or 3 years. Didn't ask for this. I don't know why I see them. But the best was yet to come, because I had poo-pooed the triangular crafts, or perhaps thought they were some type of military, which they probably were. They probably have built some small versions. Perhaps now they have made some progress with anti-gravity mechanism. I dare say they have. But this thing was absolutely gigantic. And having analysed the magazines, I used to see them in magazines years ago, they were thin and sharply cornered. Thin and sharp. This one I saw was not like that. It was in August, about, I think, 4 years ago. I didn't recall the ship, the triangular ship. I even remembered then. I thought, I'm fed up doing it, because who's going to believe me? Who will believe me? But one thing I did, well, the good thing about this sighting is that I noticed some very interesting things about it, and which were quite different from the magazines I had read. Also, it was in broad daylight. It was at about 7:15 in August. The sun was this side, blue sky, all clear. It just gracefully passed overhead. And I was just out there having a naughty cigarette. I smoked those cigarettes. And I just caught it, and I saw it, and I was so gobsmacked. Now people say, why didn't you run in and get your phone and take a picture of it? They always say, why didn't you get a picture of it? By the time I went in to get the phone, to set up the camera and try and say, I wished I had now, I wished I filmed it, I would have missed it. Now what, you've got 2 choices. You're going to risk, at that time, you've got 2 choices. You're going to observe it clearly, and I observed it very clearly, or you're going to miss details, try and get your phone and record it. I chose to see it, to watch it. One of the very interesting things about this ship was, firstly, it was thick set. It wasn't thin, it was about, from the magazines here, it's about that thick. It was very thick set, extremely thick set. Secondly, it was the size of 2 football pitches, football fields. It was gigantic, it was massive. From the height of it, I estimated it to be about absolutely massive, colossal. Secondly, the corners weren't sharp, they were beautifully rounded, just rounded. I was quite surprised because I'd always seen them as sharp, but this was quite beautifully rounded. And on the side of it, there were no lights, by the way. There were no lights, there's not one light on it. No lights visible. It could be attributed, because I do believe people have seen them, that could be attributed to the fact that this, at night they activate them. But it was broad daylight. It had not one light on it. I couldn't see any technical machinery beneath it. I couldn't see any girders. It was just smooth. And it shone like tar. It looked like it had been put into a mould and pulled out. That's what it reminded me of. And I'm giving you this straight. I'm not elaborating on anything. No lights. It looked like it had been moulded. There were no seams. What there were on one side of it, or the side, where the triangular, this size of that part of it, it's like lines, grooves, machine grooved, all the way along. Just machine grooved. You could see the sun. It was so big, I could see the side of it. And it showed this beautiful machine, absolutely perfect, these grooves. And it just casually drifted on at the speed of a plane. There was no sound, because I'm very observant, like most of you. There was no sound. There were no fumes, nothing. It's just like casually passing, and it just disappeared. Now, if that was a military aircraft, I dare say, I doubt whether they would fly their super secret machinery over civilian airspace. They wouldn't do it. What's the point? And all I keep hearing at the moment, I keep hearing this nonsense of them doing mind experiments with people to see how they'd react, or fooling them into believing that they are aliens when in fact they are the military. A waste of time and effort, but an absolute waste. I remembered seeing a program recently on YouTube, this doctor, who he's entitled to his own opinions, of course, but he's actually going on about this elite group of people in the world who can send this beam of light in to your room, anyone at any time, and pretend, let's just cut to the chase, pretend you've had an abduction, to make out there is a phantom menace to up the arms division. What on earth is that all about? I listened to this again and again. I read into it, and I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. I believe he's unwittingly or wittingly creating a distraction from the truth, the horrible truth that they certainly have no control over these. I don't believe they have any control over their ships or them. They know about them, they're aware of them, and when someone is powerless, they get frightened and desperate. So what do? They come up with tactics to try and fool people into believing, oh, it's the military doing some very advanced tests. I don't doubt the military has some incredible equipment. I'm not saying they haven't developed crafts of anti-gravity mechanism. They probably have now, smaller versions, but nothing like the one I saw. It's funny, isn't it? You know when you see it. That's unearthly. It wasn't of this planet. It wasn't designed from us. You see, one thing about human beings is that it doesn't matter how advanced our jets look, or our rockets or spaceships, they have an earth feel to them. They have an earth feel. They have a design which we are, it's just us. That didn't. That ship didn't. So that was the most striking thing when I saw the triangle. It still stuns me to this day. I don't believe, this is where I come to this. Now, Professor Stephen Hawkins, the wonderful genius, warned about this. He warned them. And have you noticed, now I didn't discover this, this is credit to someone else. 666, Mark of the Beast. Even the statue they have in their establishment is the destroyer, a symbolism of the destroyer of worlds. Now, I admire them for looking into the subatomic particle to try and find the God head, the glue that basically sticks us all together, what created the universe. I absolutely admire that, because we're creatures of curiosity. We are allowed to explore, but they're not just doing that. And Andrew Chaplin asked me, when I did my talk, did you see the ceremony they did on the reignition of their monstrosity? I said, yes, it was satanical. Purely satanical. It's like a slap in the face. Because they're not just looking for the God particle. I believe they're looking into other dimensions. Of course they are. It's like a kid with matches. They're looking to see what else they can find. And this is where the dimensions come in. Oh, I believe them. The word dimension, I have to laugh as well. To us, it's like an invisible field or invisible world. It's ethereal, but it's not to them, because they're trying to crack it open. Could they unwittingly or wittingly, which I believe, bring things through that are undesirable? And I think you know who I mean, because I believe in certain aspects of the Archon, the demons, because they've been so heavily documented, and there's no smoke without fire. There must be some truth to it, and I believe there is. Not all of them, but a good majority of them. And these people aren't helping. This aloofness, the statue, the bringer of destruction, the 666, it's like 9/11. Well, 9/11's the emergency code in America. How disgusting. And that's not terrorism. I don't believe it's terrorism at all. It's an inside job. Inside job, just to force war and destruction and misery. There is my beloved grandma. That is my grandma. She was lovely. As I said, she was psychic, very young. As grandmas usually are, lovely souls. And we come to him yours truly. You know, as a kid, as I said, I never had any interest in religion. I still don't, because religion has just created destruction and hatred, wars. I think if they wish to believe in something, that's fine, as long as it doesn't affect other people. They don't brainwash them. But the trouble is they do. They push this on people. They convert them. They brainwash them into believing that what they state is true. That, you know, but I've always believed in him. I trust my instincts. This is only a mock of him. We don't know what he looks like. He's very, actually, ironically, just very rarely mentioned in the Bible, and that's not mentioned at all much. But we do know that he created a war, caused a war. He tried to overthrow God, his palace. His ministry of angels tried to, what do they call it, a coup. And then he was banished to earth, allegedly twisted and made a mockery of and sent into the underworld. Well, the underworld, as I said with CERN, sounds to me like a dimension where he's safe pocketed away. Could it be possible that they're finding a way using technology, which at least something, I don't believe they're like ghouls that come up, using some kind of technology, because they would be more advanced than us, to break through our realm? Is quite possible. And the military and space agencies are just as bad. Because, you know, the thing is, we're adults, I'm an adult, you grow up, you trust them. I don't anymore. After seeing the wonderful researchers who've done all the work into the moon projects, the landings, I know it's such a mess now, we're not sure whether we did land or not. I can't tell, but this footage we're seeing is very dodgy now. And NASA, like CERN, it's a promotion, a public program. You know, show them what we want them to see, but keep all the rest. Keep that. Don't show them that. I don't believe they're good. I think they know a lot more than what's going on. I think God is beautiful. I've always believed in a God. There must be some truth to some intelligence making us. I don't believe it was all just by accident. And I did state this in Twin Souls. Isn't it funny? Because we are material of the universe. We're made from the universe. We are made from physical matter. But something gave rise to that. I remember at school, teacher said the Big Bang. I said, so of course the Big Bang. He said, you don't question. It just happened. Nothing just happens. You have to have cause and effect. You know, what was there before the Big Bang? There's no such thing as nothing. We're now discovering that dark matter is a reality. But this God is beautiful. The Lord must never be abandoned, and are not religious, and we, his droplets of love, must overcome the evil that is polluting our world, and it is. I think we all know it's getting worse. As you said yourself, Ben, and you're absolutely right, regarding just a simple thing like Brexit is engineered to create hatred, and it's not going well, is it, for them? They hate it. I've noticed these echelons, this elite, who are always in the shadows like them. They're probably working hand in hand with these, which they are. Tony Blair's one of them, I'm sorry. You can see the power in their eyes. There's something about them. You can see the greed and power in their eyes. They blatantly, totally disregard a democratic vote and tell them, we know what's best. No, he knows what's best, because he wants the best. Him and his merry band of men after the gold. I tell you what, if they made a pact with him, he'll give them all this magic now, as he will the people who show adulation to him and honour, because belief shapes reality. That's why they have all these in the old mystical books and things. They have all these stars. Yeah, if you believe it, then I think it will happen. You can create anything to a degree. I always said nothing's impossible. It's improbable, but it's not impossible. I said here, as I said, God is beautiful. God is our Father. The Lord must never be abandoned, and we, his droplets of love, must overcome the evil that is polluting our world. Politicians, bankers, the elite, not all, are wittingly or unwittingly siding with the demon king. They may be granted riches and power now, but when he himself arrives, they will pay dearly for their sins, for their phony lord and master is unforgiving and a deceiver, a force to be reckoned with. Never in my life would I have believed I'd make such a startling conclusion. But my research and own opinions continuously forced me into this final and damaging assumption. Also, the fact of cattle mutilation. I don't believe it's the military doing it all. I've heard this is not them. It's a power they can't control. They have clean-up operations to clean up after them. Now, like Sherlock Holmes, you have to wonder what it is they're doing. Why are these things cutting up the cattle? I don't know if they're connected with these, whether they're the greys. There's something dark, evil is doing it. I thought you have to think like Sherlock Holmes. Well, they're cutting up cattle. Dairy products are a vast source of protein for us all, isn't it? Butter, milk, beef. Most of us have it. I know there's vegetation, but on the whole, we all have it. Could it be possible that they're looking to see how they're ingested and if they can introduce some kind of subtle enzyme to change things? I mean, when you look at people now, they're much angrier. What's causing it? They are. Most of the people are angry. They get impatient and angry. Is it that? Are they causing a meltdown? Are they intending a meltdown so that we don't tear ourselves apart before he arrives? It makes you think. And that's what I was going on about the matter, the material of the universe. I noticed, when this cocky teacher said to me, you don't question, I noticed on an absolute diagram, the sun and the planets around it was an atom. The sun is the nucleus. I looked at it and I thought, well, that's an atom. The sun is a nucleus. The protons, neutrons, electrons are all the satellites of planets. It's an atom. Isn't it amazing how we're based on stardust? All the universes are basically that shape. They have a star with everything circling them. They're atoms. It's fascinating, isn't it, when you think about that, how all material down here is in motion because everything moves on this world. Everything moves. In space, the physical world, everything is movement. It's all to do with movement, thrust. Whereas perhaps in their dimension, time stands still. Everything stands still. Their molecular makeup may be completely different from ours, much more superior. But I'd just like to thank you very much. That concludes my talk. And thank you very much for your kind time, and I hope it's been of interest to you. Thank you.
We've got you've got 5 minutes. If anyone has a couple of questions, if you want to take any more, it's up to you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the grooves on the side of...
yes. Yeah.
You've just investigated a UFO sighting recently from our area, and the lady described this torpedo-shaped craft that had almost three-dimensional grooves going down the side. Yeah. A little bit like the planking on a boat, but almost,
that's right.
Almost like out of a mould. Would you describe that the same?
Yeah. Yeah. They were just like they got machine on that, but on a quite a number. You know, yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yes, it would be the same. Yes. She saw to me too.
Hi, Ron. Yeah, you talk about the CERN projects and things like that.
Yeah.
And to me, because we talk about Owen Allen.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And it's reminiscent of that TV series. I think it was he did Time Tunnel.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that was, for those that don't, Time Tunnel was a 1960s series where it was set in an underground kind of Area 51 type of base underground.
Yes.
And
I vaguely remember.
Researching into time travel, and these two
yes.
scientists or something kept in every episode went through the tunnel. And went into different time zones and things like that. And I was wondering that the whole thing of this CERN project, given the fact it's billions of pounds or whatever it is, it stretches through like 3 or 4 countries, don't it? Just to supposedly look at a God particle.
Yes, that's right.
I find it hard to justify that amount of money to find something that they can't even prove or
they know
whatever like that. I think it's a cover story, like I say, for something a lot deeper now.
For interdimensional travel.
Well, it could be, or it's just a fantastic tube station. I don't know. There definitely seems to be a cover story to it, and there's something, like you say, more sinister to it.
Yes, yes. I mean, the dance they did. Did you see it? It's satanical. I'm sorry, but even for a rational-minded person, you're going to think, what the hell's that all about? That's really satanical.
Well, a rational mind wouldn't come up with that sort of thing.
Ours do. Because I would, think there's something wrong with that. Whereas other people, you're right, wouldn't bat either. But they're always a nice dance. You think, well, they're half naked in there. It's
they
just.
have all these like it was like a bushy. They were like hedges danced around, weren't they? Flouncing.
Half naked and going into the circle, weren't they? All naked.
A normal mind couldn't have come up.
You're right. That's right. That's right.
Without thinking this is crazy.
Yes, but the likes of us think
Okay, so I think that's time now.
Yeah.
Is that enough? Do you want time for one more?
Any more?
You said was it a shadowy group?
Yes.
Was that military or
Illuminati.
Illuminati? Yeah. So
Well, we call them that.
Yeah.
We have to give them a name.
kind of.
I don't think they're really called that.
Yeah.
There's something else.
They don't call themselves.
Top bankers, the ones who.
Well, they're in trouble now anyway, aren't they?
Yes, that's right. And their rooms.
Serious trouble.
Yes, that's
They
right.
are absolutely panicking. Trump's really sorted it out. The things we don't hear about any of that over here. They go, it all happens in America. Sorry, we are governing America. We've started all the shit with the dossier.
Everything has a knock-on effect.
Yeah, and everyone, a lot of Americans, Obama's trying to come over here for cover, but the Queen won't have it. They're all trying to come over here
Yeah, well,
to
good
get
on her.
away, but
Good on her.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thanks very much for running.
Yes, thank you.
Ronald
I'm afraid Philip and I have to go because we have people coming over tonight. I know it sounds like a cop-off, but we have to go. I do apologise, but we come from Bedfordshire, so it's about. We'd love to have seen your show, but as I said, we'll read your book.
We've got the Greys coming round.
Thanks for coming, guys. Last name is up there.
Yeah.
I know a lot.
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.